Okay, so in the last video, what we did is we took a look at how objects have components, and in particular, this object has a text mesh with a text attribute, and that this can be changed. Well, you can also change it via code. This is a component, so you use the code that says get component. This is the text mesh component, so you say it's the text mesh. And this is the text attribute, so you use the word text, and then you change what you want it to be, and it's in quotes. This can also be a variable, and that's what we're going to do in this lesson. We're going to create a variable that has multiple values and then cycle through them. So whereas this is what's known as a constant, we're going to swap this out to be a variable. So this was just to demonstrate how this works. Now we're going to build on that. So how do we build on that? We're going to use something that's known as a list variable. A list variable is different than other variables because whereas other variables have a single value, with a list, well, at any given time it only has one value. But with a list variable, you can predefine a range of values and say, here's 100 different values, and depending on which one we say to use, that's what we want it to be equal to. So it can be used for games that are very text-heavy, so you can cycle through what you want the text to display, such as a game like this. It can also be used for other reasons as well. But specifically, it's when you have a predetermined set of data points that you need used. So unlike what I normally do, I'm going to paste this in rather than typing it out, because it's easy to make a mistake, but I'll still walk you through it. All right, so let's take this. Oops, sorry for the typo there. Now, before we get into this, at the top we have to add something for lists to work. So using system.collections, just like above it, but then you type in generic. And then this should clear up. Looks like I'm missing a quote there. Better. Okay, so let's break this down. So first you use the word list. It has to be capitalized. Then just like in get component, you're going to use the less than and the greater than sign, but they're not being used as less than and greater than. You're not saying list is less than string and string is greater than questions. What you're doing is you're using these kind of as if they're parentheses. So list, what kind of list? It's a string. So just as you have to declare in other variables, is it a transform, is it a sprite? You still have to declare what type of values you're going to be using. We're using string values. Then you have to name the variable. So just as you name this variable, you have to name this variable. So list string, we're going to use the word questions as the name of the variable. Is equal to, and then you kind of just repeat what you did. New list string, the parentheses, and then the squiggly brackets. And then what you're doing is, since it's strings, you're putting in a value surrounded by quotes. So quote, and then in this case the word B, because that's one of the images that we're going to use, then another set of quotes, and then a comma. And just to clarify, it's not the single quote, it's the double quote, which is next to the enter key, which you can which you can use by holding the shift key and then pressing that button. So it's the double quote, just in case this isn't clear on the screen. So quote B quote comma quote cake quote comma. I'm not going to go through all these. Quote burger quote comma. So that is the pattern. The quote, the word, the quote, and then the comma. Don't need a comma at the end after the last one. Then another squiggly bracket, and then a semicolon, just like at the end of most other lines. Now, if you want to pause the video, that's fine. Rather than me just sitting here and letting you digest that, you can just pause the video and type that out. But that's the syntax. So the word list, the less than sign, the word string, the greater than sign, a space, the name of the variable, an equal sign, and then new list string, parentheses, squiggly bracket, and then the individual values surrounded by quote, and followed by a comma. Now, what we've done, okay, is we've created a variable that can have multiple values. Only one at a time. You'll only have one value at a time, but you've predefined the range of values. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and drop it in here, but not quite yet. We're going to say, rather than this be equal to a constant, we're going to say this is equal to the variable. There's one other thing you need to know, though, and that is each one of these has a position. And unfortunately, computers being computers, this is the 0 position. Yes, it's a pain. Sorry, that's how life works. This is the 0 position. This is the 1 position. This is the 2 position. This is the 3 position, and on and on and on. So what you're going to do is when you use the variable questions, you have to define, or declare rather, what position you want it to use. It's not using them all at once. It's only ever using one at a time. And so what you do is you replace this with the word questions, because that's the name of the variable, with a declaration of which value you want it to be. So this would be questions, bracket, and then which one. Let's use position 1. Just be glad that we're using strings instead of numbers, because you could have a number here, but that's the value, not the position. So it gets a little confusing when you see a numeric value, but not the position. So let's save this. And if everything works as intended, this should now display cake. Because again, this is the 0 position, this is the 1 position. If for some reason you find that really messes you up, you could always make this be like that and then just never use it. That you don't start at the 0 position, you start at the 1 position. So you can kind of get around the 0 position. You just have to make sure that the system doesn't ignore it. You just have to kind of adjust for it if you don't want to use the 0 position. And there you go. So now that gets us closer to where we'd be. We're still only showing one value at a time, but now we've created a range of values. So how do we cycle through these? So what we're going to do is we now need a statement that randomizes. Okay, so let's create another variable. So public int, so it's an integer, so no fractions. Public int, and we'll call this text pointer, because I believe it's referred to as a pointer when you're saying which position you're looking at. So text pointer, text position. I tend to avoid the word position unless I'm very explicitly referring to coordinates, because the code usually refers to coordinates as a position. So text pointer. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and take it out of the start section. Again, this was just for demonstrative purposes. It wasn't meant to be the final code. I just wanted to introduce this in stages, in iterations. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take that new variable and we're going to do, actually, we'll put it into the start for the moment, since we don't have a great way of cycling. We'll do text pointer, equals random dot range. And now what you have to do is you have to give the beginning and the end points. Now, if you look at the description here, according to Unity, the minimum and the maximum are both inclusive. Unless something has changed, I've never ever seen that max number be inclusive. So the low end, the minimum, is inclusive, but the max never seems to be inclusive. Maybe that's changed, maybe I'm just wrong. So you might find yourself having to bump this up by a single number to get all the values you want. So again, this is the 0 position. So you would do 0, comma, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I only put 10 here as being lazy. So we're going to bump it up to 11. because again, it's not inclusive despite what it says. Maybe an upgraded, updated version has taken care of it, but to the best of my knowledge, this still doesn't. And then what we do is we replace, so this is a variable, but it had a constant saying which value. So now even the pointer itself is going to be a variable. So the value is a variable, and the pointer is a variable. Now, this gets calculated in the start. So we might have to run this a bunch of times because, like I said, we don't have a great way of cycling through it. So every time we run it, it's going to recalculate. It might repeat since we only have 10 choices, but it should change fairly frequently. So we run it, it says flower. We run it, it says hammer. We run it, it says door. We run it, it says B. So it's working. So when it first starts, it calculates a random number, and then when you run it, once it calculates the number, it then applies this. So we get much closer now. So we can randomize this, we just don't have a way of choosing the correct answer and selecting it. So the next step would be that. The next step is to decide what the right answer should be, and then how you then cycle through the next one. So we already have the ability to click on an answer. We already have the ability to determine which answer has to be clicked on, because as you recall in here, we grab the name of the object. So what we have to do is we simply have to declare up here for each value which one should be the object that we're going to click on. So let's look at this. So we said B will be 0. So B was for choice 1. So if B is the image that's being displayed, if B is the text that's being displayed, then if everything is working correctly, the B should be displayed and you should be able to click on it. So that's two really entirely different things we have to do, is A, showing the right ones, B, showing, being able to determine which one has been clicked on correctly. So showing the correct choices and being able to detect that the correct one of those choices has been clicked on. So for that, what we need to do is we need more lists. We need a list, and this one I will type out. So list string, because we're going to be looking at object names, and it's going to be what is the correct selection equals new list string Honestly, I don't like the syntax of list variables, but it is what it is. Now, in this case, what we're doing is we only have 3 objects, so there's only 3 names we're cycling through. Are you clicking on choice 1, choice 2, or choice 3? So since we've already, like I said, we already can capture the name what's being clicked on, we now need to compare that to what the correct name should be. So we're going to literally use this exact naming. So if it's B, then it should be choice 1. And the problem is, I think when I did these, I did them left to right, which means choice 1 is the right choice for almost all of these. So quick pause here as I take a look. So choice 1 has the bee, the burger, the cactus. So that was just a text file, sorry. So bee, cake, burger. So which one has the cake? Number 1 also has the cake. So choice 1, we might mix these up a little bit so it's not so repetitive. So bee, cake, burger, I believe I said these were all choice ones. Canon, where's Canon? Did I not? I thought I put the Canon. So even Canon is choice 1. So B is choice 1, cake is choice 1, Canon is choice 1, door is choice 1. I think I'll probably mix these up in a bit. But the takeaway is that this has to be the name of the object that is the correct one to click on. Door is also choice 1. Fries, okay, we finally got something other than choice 1. Fries are choice 2. Hammer is also choice 2. Salt, did I even put salt? Yes, salt is choice 3. And what else? Spider. Spider's also choice 3. Okay. And then squiggly bracket at the end, semicolon. Let's just widen this out a little bit. There we go. Save that. So now what we've done is we've said that this is the corresponding correct object to be clicked on when this is the text that's being displayed. So again, that means this must match the name of the object being clicked on. So now that we've done that, that means we need to be able to have the correct object be depicted. So we need these to change according to these. So if this is B, then we need this to show the B, since this is the one that has the B, and these two to show something else. So again, what you can do is you can just go right across the top. Image 1 is B, image 1 is dragonfly, image 1 is safe. None of them repeat. So what you can do is you can just have always be image 1, and then if it's this, then it'd always be image 2, because cake, image 4, so cake is image 4, image 4. You can just keep it simple by going across the top like that. So now what I think we're going to do, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I do want the correct choices to display. So how do we do that? What we need to do is the script that's attached to this, we need it to be aware of this. We need it to be aware of this variable. And right now, it's not. So we need to have this be accessible by the other objects. However, this video is getting kind of long already, so I think we'll stop there. So we got some actual functionality in place, and that is the choosing of a random number and the changing of the text. What we're eventually going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to bring this into the update section, but we can't do that until we have a way of cycling, because right now if we put it here, with every single frame, a new random number would be determined, and this would change with every single frame. We don't want that. So this is really just here for demonstrative purposes. It will eventually get moved into the update section once we have the way of updating this. But like I said, this video is getting kind of long already, so let's stop there. You can create the lists, and then in the next video, we're going to have the script that's attached to the objects be able to access this variable in some form or another.